Good evening to you, Nina. It sounds like this deal has basically been reached between the negotiators on the ground. Any official word from the White House?
No, I'm afraid no official statement yet, but the industry groups that we are in touch with say that they're expecting an official statement imminently, and we are in constant touch with the U.S. trade representative who convenes these negotiations. So I'm afraid no official reaction yet, but we are expecting some sort of statement imminently.
Do you know what's been happening over the last few days, how this impasse was resolved? Because it seemed like the sides were quite far apart. South Africa saying health is of primary importance, the US saying that its meat exports were very safe.
It's unclear, I think, which side made the most compromises at this point. From the U.S. perspective, I think that the U.S. administration has felt for some time that the demands being made by South Africa were unreasonable, that they were not in line with standard practices or the current protocols used to export to 138 countries under existing trade and health rules. That doesn't eliminate, obviously, the possibility of spreading salmonella, as you mentioned, but it was felt that such guarantees weren't in the end necessary where chicken is generally cooked, but in that case it'll be eliminated as a potential food poisoning source. So that's what we know so far.
Our own reporter here at the SABC looking at the statements from South Africa today, saying it looks like America was the party that received what it wanted, that South Africa bent over backwards in the end. Any comment on that?
Well, we know very little from the US side. I think the US has been very sensitive to the negotiations and the sensitivity surrounding these negotiations. I think the US has been very careful not to give details of its negotiating position and has, I think, we're unlikely to see the US come forward and claim victory for having won the battle.
What do we know so far about the terms and conditions? Apparently there are some terms and conditions. Any news reaching your side?
Well, we know that a deal has been struck on chicken, but it's not very clear at the moment what compromises were struck on the health certification issue. The US has been trying to get South Africa to give access to their beef market, and that's been an ongoing problem and issue surrounding the country of origin rules, because US beef sometimes originates from Canadian and Mexican sources. So again, I think we'll have to wait for a little bit more detail from Washington's side.
What about the bigger picture? There was a threat from the United States last year. Obama said there needed to be a resolution, in strong words from our president, Jacob Zuma, about how South Africa didn't appreciate being threatened, being treated like a colony, in his words. At least a deal has been reached. Do you think at least that bodes well for trade relations between these two countries that seem to be in danger at some point?
Well, I think that President Zuma's comments, I think, sent shockwaves here in Washington. And the US, again, going back to that earlier point, it's been very reluctant to release details or to be very public about the nature of the negotiations. I think that does speak to an understanding around the sensitivity of these negotiations, and I think a desire to reach a compromise deal for South Africa, a sense here in Washington that the trading relationship and the long-term survival of the trading relationship trumps everything, and I think Washington had that very much in sight.
Finally, what was at stake here was citrus fruit from South Africa, wine, macadamia nuts, things like that, under the agricultural banner. The danger was that the US could have easily found other suppliers. Do you agree that this is good news, at least for the South African exporters?
Yeah, I mean, I think those all were at stake because they were agricultural products, and President Obama would have tried to block, or at least not block, because South African products would still be coming in, but definitely to tweak the terms of the trading arrangement with South Africa. I think that given the general scale of South Africa's exports, it would have had a very sort of minor impact on South Africa's economy, because the trading tariffs were somewhere around 5% and didn't represent the overall picture. But had Agoa benefits been removed overall for South Africa, that would have been absolutely devastating, especially if you look at the size of, say, the BMW export market for South Africa, which is worth billions of dollars.
All right, thank you very much. Nina Maria Potts reporting from Washington. We heard today from our own Trade and Industry Minister that a deal has been reached. So it just looks like the White House has to rubber stamp that and say yes.